Thea Stilton. MOUSEFORD Academy. The Secret Notebook. A Clue in Verse. It was a beautiful day at MOUSEFORD Academy. But instead of enjoying the sunshine, Violet was stuck indoors feeling sorry for herself. Achoo! She sneezed. Poor Violet was recovering from the flu. She had been in bed for several days, and although she was feeling better, she was tired of being sick. Her roommates, Nikki and Paulina, were staying in Colette and Pam's room until Violet got better. Ugh, I'm so bored! Violet exclaimed with a loud sigh. Even though her fever was gone, her friends had insisted that she stay in bed. One more day. Violet knew they were right, but she was itching to get back to the whirlwind of lessons and activities at MOUSEFORD Academy. In the meantime, she tried to come up with anti-boredom remedies. First, she made a list of every cheese she'd ever eaten. Then she organized her books alphabetically. She tried to read the fashion magazines that Colette had brought her, but they weren't very interesting. Then Violet started doodling on the magazine covers with a marker, which turned out to be fun. She was busy turning a supermodel into a clown when there was a knock on her door. Knock! 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 Come in! Violet called out, and Colette, Nikki, Pamela, and Paulina stepped inside. Together, the 5 friends called themselves the Thea sisters. Finally, you're here, she squeaked. What's the news? How was the first English class? What books is Professor Ratcliffe having us read this semester? Hey, slow down, Violet, Pam said. One question at a time. Violet took a deep breath. Sorry. I'm just so excited. You've got to tell me about English class. You know it's my favorite. Paulina smiled. Well, we're not reading any novels, she said. We're not? Violet asked, puzzled. Nikki shook her head. Nope. And no short stories either. And no plays, Colette added. Then what will we be reading? Violet asked, curious. Since you're my friend, I'll give you a CLUE, Pam replied. We'll read some that don't rhyme and others that do. Violet grinned. I get it now. We're going to study poetry. Exactly! Pam exclaimed, clapping her paws. How exciting, Violet replied, her eyes shining. I love poetry. Poetry fever. Violet returned to her classes the next day. During Professor Margaret Ratcliffe's class, she could barely contain her excitement as she read the list of all the poets they were going to study. My fever may be gone, she said to Colette when class was over, but I think I have another fever. Oh no, really? Colette asked. Violet grinned. Yes. Poetry fever. And Violet wasn't the only student who had been infected by the poetry bug. After a week of class, just about everyone was discussing their favorite poems and poets. In fact, Violet and her friends got into a heated discussion about their favorite poets one afternoon in the cafeteria. Pam spotted Professor Ratcliffe and called her over. Can you please give us your opinion? Pam asked. Of course, the professor replied. These mouselets are certain that Elizabeth Barrett Browning is the best poet, writer said. But they're wrong, added his friend Ron. No, you're wrong. She is the best poet. Ellie insisted enthusiastically. She writes about things that matter, like love and life. Colette nodded in agreement. Elizabeth Barrett Browning's words are so beautiful, she said, and then she began to recite one of her favorite poems. How do I love thee? Let me count the ways. I love thee to the depth and breadth and my soul can reach, height when feeling out of sight, Nikki sighed. Wow, that is beautiful. It's nice, but poems can make you feel powerful, too, Ron argued. Like the poems of Walt Whitman. Yes. Craig agreed enthusiastically. He jumped up on a chair and recited. Oh, Captain. My Captain. Our fearful trip is done. The ship has weathered every rack, the prize we sought is won. Everyone clapped for Craig except for Ruby Flashy Fur, who had been listening to the whole argument with a frown on her snout. I just don't get it, she said. It's all pretty boring to me. Professor Ratcliffe cleared her throat. I am happy to see that poetry is spurring such interesting discussions, she said with a smile. However, this isn't an argument that I can settle. Any poet who touches your soul is a good poet. Now, if you'll excuse me, my tea is getting cold. As the professor walked away, Tanya leaned in and whispered to her friends. I have an idea, she said mysteriously. Let's meet in the garden after class. Elizabeth Barrett Browning, 1806 to 1861, she was one of the most famous Victorian poets and was popular in England and the United States. Walt Whitman, 1819 to 1892. An American poet and journalist, his best-known work is the poetry collection Leaves of Grass. A poetry club? I wonder where she is, Pam mused. The last class of the day was over, and a group of mouselets was waiting in the garden for Tanya, the Thea sisters, Ruby and her friends, the Ruby crew, and Tanya's best friend, Ellie. I have better things to do than sit around here, Ruby complained impatiently. There she is! Ellie cried as Tanya ran toward them with a bulky bag slung over her shoulder. Sorry I'm late, Tanya apologized, catching her breath. What's in the bag? Ruby asked. Tanya grinned. I stopped at the Thrifty Rat and got us these. She gave a colorful notebook to each of her friends. Thanks, Nikki said. But what are they for? To write our poetry, Tanya announced. You mean, write our own poems? Violet asked a little nervously. Exactly, Tanya replied. I think we should form a poetry club. What, exactly, is a poetry club? Pam wanted to know. We can write our own poems and have poetry readings, she said, her blue eyes shining with excitement. And we can meet in the Lizard Lounge. Paulina clapped her paws together. I love that idea. We'll need to decorate the Lizard Lounge to fit the theme, Ellie suggested. We can add comfortable, colorful pillows, Paulina said. I love it, Colette said. And we could wear more poetic clothes and give ourselves poetic nicknames. I'd like to be Lady Colette. And we could eat poetic snacks, Pam added. Like tiny cheese sandwiches with the crusts cut off. Fabumouse! Nikki exclaimed. This will be fun. Maybe you think it's Fabumouse, but I don't. Ruby said, annoyed. Why not? Tanya asked. Poetry club, to-do list, decorate the clubhouse. Pick poetic nicknames. Wear inspiring clothing. Get poetic snacks. Because poetry makes me yawn. Ruby snapped. She turned to the Ruby crew. Let's go. We don't want to be in this boring club. She tossed her notebook on the ground and walked away, followed by her friends. If there were a club for rude mouselets, Ruby would definitely be its president. Pam exclaimed. Her friends shook their heads, laughing. That's Ruby for you, Paulina said. But that's okay. We can still have a poetry club without her. A secret meeting. The members of the brand new poetry club got busy right away. First, they decorated the lizard lounge with big pillows for the floor. They brought in flowers and electric candles to set the mood. That night, they got to work writing their poems. By the next afternoon, they were all ready for the first meeting. Each club member brought in an object to represent the poem she had created. "It looks beautiful in here," Tanya remarked, looking around. "A perfect setting for poetry readings." The other mouselets all agreed that the room was perfect. "So, should we start reading our poems?" Pam asked. "Not yet," Colette replied. "I think we should all reveal the nicknames we've chosen." "Good idea," Paulina agreed. "I'll go first. I'm inspired by beautiful colors. So I'm choosing the nickname Rainbow." "Love it," Nikki said. "And I'm writing poems about nature, so I'm going with the nickname River." "I would like to be called Melody," Violet chimed in. "Because I've been listening to music to inspire my writing." "I've been writing poetry when I look at the sea," Ellie said. "So I'd like to be called Sea Star." "That's a good one for you, Ellie," Tanya said. "I'd like to be Lilija, after my grandmother back in Russia. She read me poems when I was just a little museling." "What about you, Pam?" Nikki asked. "Will you be Pepperoni, because you love pizza so much?" "Ha, very funny," Pam replied. "But no. Where I come from, rap music is the best poetry. So you can call me Brooklyn." Tanya stood up. "Now that we've introduced ourselves," she began, "I, Lilia, declare the first meeting of the Poetry Club officially open." "I'll go first," Paulina offered. She sat in the big red chair that the mouselets had designated as their poem throne. Meanwhile, down the hall in the Gecko Lounge, Ryder was talking to the other Gecko Club members. "I think the Lizard Club is hiding something," he said. "I do, too," Shin agreed, adjusting his glasses as he spoke. "Did you notice how they were whispering to each other at lunch today?" Craig was working on his biceps, using a dictionary as a dumbbell. "What do you think they're up to?" "I'm not sure," Ron replied, "but I think I know where they are." I saw Tanya rushing into the Lizard Lounge just a few minutes ago. The four young rodents looked at one another. "Let's go find out what they're up to," Craig cried. Rhyme time. Orange makes my heart feel warm. Gray is like a coming storm. Purple makes me rock and roll. Colors sparkle in my soul. Paulina's friends clapped as she finished her poem. "Well done," Colette cheered. The other members of the poetry club took their turns. Tanya, Lilia, read a poem about a sled race. Then Lady Colette read a poem titled Love at First Sight, dedicated to a purse. After that, Pam, Brooklyn, started rapping about Gorgonzola pizza. The pizza poem made everyone hungry. So they broke for a snack. Then Ellie, Sea Star, read a poem about a coral reef. Nikki, River, followed with a beautiful poem about the sound of the wind blowing through tree branches. "Your turn, Melody," Nikki said to Violet as she got off the poem throne. Violet looked down at her paws. I didn't write anything yet," she said. "I just wasn't feeling any inspiration." Actually, Violet was afraid to tell her friends the truth. She was too shy to read her poem out loud. "Next time, then," Pam said, and then crash! The loud noise came from just outside their door. Tanya opened the door and found Ron, Craig, Ryder, and Shin standing there. "What are you doing here?" Tanya asked suspiciously. We were just looking at this painting," Ryder said innocently. "We love art, don't we, geckos?" The other members of the poetry club stepped into the hall. If you ask me, it looks like you were spying on us, Pam accused. Craig held up his paws. All right, we confess. We were curious.